She served time in the Marines. It is Tammy Hineline.
Even as a little girl, I had always craved adventure. I'll admit it, I wanted to save the world. So naturally, I was drawn to the military. At 19, I met my recruiter, and I was hooked. I was going to join the United States Marines. Before I left for boot camp, my father and I decided to go kayaking for my birthday. We had always done things together, so this was just another adventure on a long list. I'd handled some rapids before on a group trip, and he was new to kayaking, but come on, how hard could it be? A family member recommended the perfect place for two novices like us, the Dismal River. Our original plan was an 8-hour trip downriver to a bridge where a truck would be waiting to take us back to the hotel. That plan was quickly overruled by a narrow, twisting river fraught with obstacles. Barbed wire, fallen trees, my own impending doom. It was only 20 minutes into this trip that I found myself swept violently from my kayak and into the welcoming branches of a collapsed oak, where I struggled to hold on and find footing in the fast water. My kayak and oar passed me by and became two specks in the distance. If I let go even for a second, I would be joining them. My father approached the certain death of his only child with the same stoicism he applied to making a grilled cheese sandwich. I felt less damsel in distress and more of a mild inconvenience. Can you hold on? I guess. Okay. At over 6 feet tall, my father has always been a large and naturally strong man. As a child, he grew up on a small-time farm and spent his teenage years working in lumber yards. Those thick biceps of his, the ones he once used to bring in the cows at night, and the ones he once used to lift a much smaller version of me high into the air, would now be used to pull me to shore. Downriver, we found my kayak waiting for me, but my oar was gone. I didn't know how we were going to continue the trip without it. But then my father handed me his. I've got an idea. And before I knew it, he was selecting an appropriately oar-sized tree branch and wrenching it from its joint. He would proceed to use this prize to paddle his kayak, albeit rather ineffectively, for the rest of the trip. I felt guilty. After all, I was the one who'd lost my oar, and now I get a second one? It reminded me of all the times when I was little we'd go out to restaurants, and he'd swap meals with me because I liked his better. The trip was slow and difficult, but at least that setback was behind us. And I was feeling okay. My clothes had dried, and I was just looking forward to putting the key in the ignition of that truck and going home. I got too far ahead of my father and pulled aside to wait. And wait. And I realized I was waiting too long. Where was he? He hadn't been that far behind me, and he should have come around the corner ages ago. I called out to him and heard nothing. I got out and I scanned the vast terrain, but my father was nowhere in sight. The seconds felt like hours, and I began to freak out. I was imagining him tipped over in the rapids and trapped underneath his kayak as he choked for air. I began crying, and I was yelling out, "Daddy! Daddy!" I could hear everything. I could hear the birds in the trees and the rush of the water and the tall grass swishing against my legs, but I couldn't hear my father. Everything was so loud and quiet at the same time. Everything was so vibrant and beautiful and terrifying. I was in the middle of nowhere with no cell phone service, no food, no water, and now no father. I was woefully ill-prepared for this scenario. Who the hell did I think I was? I wanted to join the Marines, and here I was in a real emergency, doing nothing. I wasn't leaping into action or being brave and decisive. I was a joke, a fraud. I wasn't Marine Corps material. How was I supposed to save the world if I couldn't even save my dad? Downriver, I saw him, soaking wet, but very much alive, and dragging his kayak behind him. He had tipped over, and in all the time it had taken him to drag his kayak to shore and empty out the water, I had planned his funeral arrangements. I ran to him, crying, "Daddy, I was scared. I don't want to be a Marine anymore." My father, being a man of few words and even fewer emotions, had always likened my decision to join the Marines to the toy puppet I had begged for as a child and promised to play with that was quickly relegated to the back of the closet to gather dust. So upon my confession, he patted my back awkwardly in the way only my father can, and there was nothing left to do and nothing left to say but to keep going. After a while, the forest faded into the distance and the water slowed down. We were moving along swiftly, but there was still no bridge and no truck home in sight. And then it began to get dark. With the image of my drowning father still fresh on my mind, I had to speak up. This was the end of the road. We had no choice. On a moonless night like this, when we couldn't even see our hand in front of our face, let alone the path ahead of us, a mistake in the dark here could mean neither of us would make it home. So, soaking wet and utterly defeated, we dragged out our kayaks and climbed up the slope farmland to wait for morning. It was there that I felt the first faint drops of rain on my skin as the skies opened up and put the icing on my birthday cake. We found a pine tree and crawled underneath it in the hopes of finding shelter. The fallen needles were in the process of decomposing and generated an earthy, mild heat that kept us rolling over and switching sides all night. One side mildly comfortable, the other side completely freezing. Roll and repeat. And if you've never been a 19-year-old girl spending the night under a pine tree and spooning with your father for warmth, you can trust me when I say it's as awkward as it sounds. Every so often, he would turn to me and go, "Oh, don't cry." But that ship had sailed. In the early light of a new morning and to a soundtrack of mooing cows, we made our way to high ground where we were spotted by a plane. My feet were cold, and my dad let me warm them on his large dad belly as we awaited rescue. Not long after, an old farm truck came bumbling over the horizon. The ride back was bumpy, and we were cold and tired, but relieved. I watched as the farms and the forest passed us by on our way back to civilization, and I thought to myself, after everything I'd been through, after everything I'd done and failed to do, was I still going to go through with it? Was I really still going to join the Marines? Hell yeah. How hard could it be?